Okay, lot. So today we will be reviewing Libertas, right? I have already done one video in the past about Agnes that's very similar to this, and we're gonna do something similar for Libertas as well, right? Recording is the second time because I realized that the first time I recorded this, it was 40 minutes long, so I'm gonna try to push it a bit faster this time. But yeah, we'll review everything about Libertas, various builds, skill up orders, how you build her, how you use her, and showcase some examples added as well. And of course, Libertas we will be reviewing in PvP and PvE because she's pretty good at both of those, right? So let's get into it. Okay, so for each category, this time I'm gonna be splitting it into PvP and PvE so that you get a better understanding of how it will work, right? And let's start with the stats, right? So, for stats with Libertas, here's the deal. In PvP content, especially when you are pushing for the high ranks, she needs two specific stats. She needs a very high speed, as high as you can, if possible, right? And she needs effect hit to make sure that she can land her third skill, ultimate skill on the enemies, right? Because here's the deal, if you don't have effect hit rate, if you don't reduce the attack gauge on the important targets, unfortunately you might just end up throwing the run, right? Of course, with effect hit rate, it really depends on how much effect resistance the enemies have, and in a lot of cases, not a lot of enemies will have high effect resistance, so effect hit rate is sort of like a, I don't know, it's like a very valuable stat, and in some cases you will be perfectly fine with like 10 or 20%, but if you want to make sure that you don't miss, I would say go for at least like 40-50 if possible. Ideally, you can cover all of it with just the main stat on the pants, right? Now, when it comes to PvE, you naturally don't need such high speeds in PvE content, and in PvE, I would usually recommend giving her decent speed. I would say like 200 plus is a good spot to land on, but you of course want to build her a bit more damage oriented. So you want to ensure that you have speed, and this time make sure that you do have high effect hit rate, because in PvE, landing debuffs, especially the defense break on her second skill, will be very, very important. But on top of that, if you are able to afford some, make sure to give her some offensive stats as well. This includes attack, crit rate, and if you do have good crit rate, crit damage as well. Next up, we have skill up priority. So again, I will split these into PvP and PvE. So for PvP, and probably 95% of you will be skilling up in this way, and that will be the first priority, of course, goes to the ultimate. The reason for that is you want to ensure that you are able to reduce the attack gauge by much more, right? And yeah, overall, the damage part of this skill isn't as important for PvP. The main thing you want to have is 100% chance to reduce it by 50%. This allows your other units to be able to follow up a little easier and to make sure that you are able to kill the enemy or CC the enemy before he makes any moves. After that, naturally you want to level up her passive, because this will counter a lot of meta units such as Priscilla's third skill or passive, such as Diana's second skill or passive, which will allow again your units to have much lower stats in order to follow up. After that, I would highly recommend going for the second skill to increase the damage and the defense break chance. And if you do have the ability to skill up, you can go for the first skill as well. Honestly, this one isn't as important. Now for PvE, I would say that skill 2 should be the priority, because this is what you're gonna be using her the most, at least in like high level PvE. However, I would really advise against building Libertas purely for PvE, because if you're building her purely for PvE, there are much better units than her. For example, a very similar skill to that is Rave's first skill, which has slightly lower chance to land it, but overall it only costs 1 mana. So overall, I would say you can build her for PvE, but if you are building Libertas overall, I would suggest skilling her up for PvP purposes. But just in case you decide to do it, skill 2 would be priority for PvE. But then again, as I said again, I would advise against this, and I would recommend prioritizing PvP skill ups such as ultimate into passive into second skill into first skill. And next up we have the gear. So for the gear, again, for PvP, you're gonna need one specific set, that is the speed set, right? Wind Scout set or whatever it's called. This is a must-have set. If you do not have the set, you will simply not be able to compete at high-level PvP because the amount of bonus it provides is absolutely huge. If you look at the base speed of Libertas, this is before I have the final skill up from here. You can see that her base speed is 132, so 22% of that is like a good like almost 30 speed or something like that. So yeah, without having 30 speed, trust me, you will not be able to compete at all, not even close, right? So speed set is the must, and then for whatever other 2 set, in a lot of cases you won't even be able to make a 2 set because ideally for PvP you want to have the equipment with the highest speed, and in a lot of cases you will notice that you might have one highest speed on one different equipment set and the highest speed on another different set. So honestly, the 2 set doesn't really matter for PvP as long as it has high speed and as long as you have sufficient effect hit rate. That will work. Just make sure that you have the speed set on her. Now for PvE purposes, because you don't need to have such massive speed on her, you can go for either a speed set or go for more sort of like offensive options. So you can go for the critical damage set, the critical rate set, attack based set, anything that would boost her damage, because honestly in PvE she will not be taking a lot of damage in most cases. You usually have that controlled with stuff like defense buffs, shields, heals, all of that, right? So the sustain part of her will not be worse than, for example, any damage dealer that you have, right? And you definitely don't need that much tankiness, so feel free to leave the speed set just so you don't have to build additional gear, but you can also go for a more offensive set to maximize a bit on her damage. Now for Remementos, this is an interesting story, and this varies a lot based on what you do. So for high level PvP, again, if you are pushing the speed limits with her, right, if you are competing for the leaderboards, the blue tier Rememento that you just get for regular summons is gonna be the best, because once skilled up to the max, which can be done very easily, it will provide you an additional 8 speed. The reason this is the best Rememento for PvP is because no other debuff type Rememento has any speed built to it at the moment, right? It might be in the future, and if there is a higher speed Rememento released later on, that one will naturally become the best one based on how much speed it gives. But at the moment, this is the best Rememento because the extra 8 speed, it might not be important if your speed is relatively low, right? But at a point such as I have with 293 speed plus 8 here, she is over 300 speed, and trust me, improving speed on gear like this becomes very difficult and may take even months of gear farming and upgrading just to get like a small 2 or 3 speed upgrade. So having 8 built into one Rememento, this will save you months and months of progress, right? Now for PvE, it's a whole different thing. For PvE, the one that I would recommend the most would be this, right? So you can get this Rememento from the Battle Pass shop, and the only reason why this is by far the most OP Rememento is because Libertas is the only unit that is able to get both defense break and damage taken up effect within a single unit. There's no other unit in the game, as far as I know, that when combined with the Rememento is able to provide both of these in one unit, and this becomes super clutch in a lot of turn-gated, time-gated contents, such as the Abyss Corridor hard levels, where you have to complete levels within a certain amount of turns. And what this allows you to do is boost your damage in the most efficient way possible. Instead of using 2 different units to do both of those effects, such as for example Pluto and Rusin or something like that, you are able to do all of that with just Libertas, which will allow you to push that difficult content much more efficiently. And if you're not lucky enough, or you simply don't want to spend the battle task currency on this Rememento, her signature Rememento is a pretty decent choice as well. This is not a Rememento that I would summon specifically for her. This is sort of like a Rememento that I would use if I had it, right? But overall, the effects it provides isn't exactly the most amazing ones, right? It increases her effect hit accuracy and increases the damage based on those effect hits. So it's a good boost to damage. It's a good boost to her effect hit rate, but not something that I would waste my pity or my pulse on if I didn't happen to pull it just from a regular bonus. And now let's talk a bit about various combos that you can use for it. As you can see, these are from the previous video I did. But essentially, in PvP, there is really the only thing that you have to ensure is that your Libertas is the first one moving, and that your team is able to follow up right after them or survive the hits that the enemies do, in order to ensure that they are able to wipe the team afterwards. The reason you want to do this is because Libertas, she's not there to do damage, she's not there to provide a lot of like debuffs and stuff. She is there to ensure that you are the first one moving and that you are able to have your team follow up right after, right? Okay, so when it comes to PvP, you have one goal with Libertas, and that is to ensure that she is the first one moving, right? The reason you want to make sure that she is the first one moving is because if she is not, in a lot of teams you will notice that enemies have units such as Diana, right? And for example, let's say my Diana was the first one moving. If you look at the attack gauge meters on the left, right? If my Diana moved, the enemy Diana would push everyone's attack gauge higher, and the enemy Libertas would be able to move right after me, meaning that I would be the one having the speed advantage. However, I wouldn't be the one that actually moved right after, right? Which is pretty much an automatic loss in a lot of cases. So you want to ensure that Libertas is the first one moving so that she is able to push back the attack bars on the enemies, and once you push them back, you want to follow up with your damage dealers and ensure that you are able to kill at least their enemy damage dealers, right? If you leave Libertas, if you leave units like Diana, Ferency alive, that's really not an issue. The main goal for you is to ensure that their main threat is gone, and once the main threat is gone, you will be able to deal with the team quite easy. Now, when it comes to PvE, right, some of the combos that I usually use Libertas in are for teams such as the Subjugation and for Abyssal Corridor, especially the hard mode, where making sure that you have enough damage in a certain amount of turns is a key to winning, right? So I have already uploaded a video about how I got all 30 stars on the hard mode there, so I might just drop a small clip from that one, right? But yeah, essentially what you use it in Abyss Corridor is as a way to boost up the damage for your other damage dealers, because she, again, as I mentioned, she is the only unit that does have both damage taken up effect from her Rememento and a skill 2 with a defense break. She becomes a very good option if you're really struggling to fit enough units in a team, because trust me, usually you will not have the luxury of bringing both a defense breaker separately as well as a damage taken up separately, right? Usually that might have to be in a single unit because you have to deal with a lot of other boss effects. You have to deal with the Abyss Corridor passive effect, right? There's a lot of things happening and you simply don't have enough leisure to allow 2 units being picked instead of 1. So yeah, she's amazing there in order to boost up the damage. So yeah, just the basic sort of idea on how I use it in PvE as a damage booster and as a sort of like an emergency backup for content like this, right? So yeah, that's pretty much just hopefully a bit of a shorter review of what I use Libertas on. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will most likely be on a unit called Beatrice, I think. And yeah, peace.